You're right there, guys. This is Play the Corby way. We're just going to venture into a football manager story for a change. So you can see the leagues that we've got on with a 69,000 player count. The computer performance is 5-star, and estimated game speed, as long as it's around 2-star, you're pretty safe. So now move on to making the manager. We've gone for the name of Raymond Casagrande because it's always interesting. Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter like what you call him, it just adds to the philosophy you want to play. So I made him Spanish, made him a Sunday League reputation as well. So I was considering starting unemployed, but then I thought it's quite hard to get a job when you're a Sunday League reputation. So I thought we'd start in League 2. And there's always a team that I've looked at from here, and that's Fleetwood Town. So I thought we'd give them a go. Predicted to finish quite highly, but we'll see how it goes. It's always a good idea to save it as well at regular points in the game, because there is such things as crash dumps, which means you lose your data to the last point where you saved it. So you don't want that to happen. So we'll just let that quickly save. So these are the messages. Well, this is the tutorial that comes up when you start a new game. It's just basically, how do I do certain things. I've never really looked at it personally because I just like learning myself and looking at all the different features. So these are the opening messages. Casagrande takes charge at Fleetwood, and then you've got some meetings with your board and the assistant. So you've got the board meetings first. I don't know whether this has an effect on how secure your job is right at the start, but I always just be nice to them to start with. Because at the end of the day, we haven't requested anything off them yet, so we don't know whether they're going to be nice or not. And then it takes you into this assistant manager meeting. He just asks you if you want an intra-squad friendly, and whether you want a team report, and whether you want to meet your backroom staff. Just all the general things that an assistant manager would do, I guess. Now, it's always a good idea to check your assistant, and if he's not very good, then it's obviously worth replacing him. You can get him to control your friendlies as well, which, if you want to get through pre-season quickly, is not a bad thing to do. But if you want to be able to get an early look at your tactic and how it's working, then it's always good to play them, because you can tweak them game by game before you get into the actual season. So now we've done them, you get a transfers update, and as you can see, we've got this guy on loan with a lot of potential. He's got a lot as well. And then this last guy is our striker, and he seems like he's going to be a key part of our promotion bid this season. And then we've got a few players out on loan. Your subscriptions, basically anything you subscribe to will come into your inbox on the news screen. So you can subscribe to your favourite teams, like different competitions, etc. And then this is the team report that our assistant made for us. It's a good thing to look at, because it shows you what areas you need to strengthen in. And as you can see, I've changed it to by position, so it shows you the actual different positions you've got. So now it's time to create a tactic. I'm usually one for going for some strange formations, so if you don't like them, fair enough, not many people do. But I just like keeping it a little bit different, really. and it's always good to have multiple tactics as well. While we're on the tactics, I may as well mention the fact they've brought in a new tactic system this year from the old one. There used to be sliders for team instructions, but now you've got loads of different shouts and stuff, which you will see in a minute. Just sorting out all the player positions. With playing three at the back, I usually have one on cover, just because then he sort of acts like a sweeper, but it's hard to find the sweeper on this game, especially at League 2 level. So these are the shouts that I mentioned before. They work in the same way as the sliders. In a way, it's not as easy to tweak as much as you could last year, but on this one you can actually read what you're trying to put into the team, so it's a little bit easier to understand. So you've got like retain possession, which obviously that makes sense, whereas before you could only put a shout on in match to retain possession, and you could just put your pass into short. So now we're going to move on to the player instructions. These are just things such as, like, for the goalkeeper, I always have him on pass it shorter and distribute to a certain defender, because kicking from goalkeepers in this game can be a little bit dodgy, to say the least. So I always think if I just pass it out to a defender, there's more chance he's going to be able to find a player around him, because we're trying to keep possession, than the goalkeeper just hoofing up randomly and hoping for a knockdown. Which might work for this team, because we have got John Parkin up front, who is a target man. But it's just a little bit safer to pass it to your defenders. Obviously, there are risks involved with that, because if a team is pressing you high up the field, then your defenders could lose it straight away. But that's a risk I'm willing to take, because I do like playing a possession game. I usually play with wing backs when I'm playing at a higher level, but it's quite hard to find wing backs at this level. So I thought I'd just keep it sort of basic positions, like wide midfielders are quite easy to find. Just get them with good crossing, good work rate, so that they work up and down the field. Defensive midfield is just an aggressive person who likes to snap people, and I like my players to be able to tackle, whether it's in a good way or a bad way, because at the end of the day, if they can get away without a red card and you can injure one of the opponent's better players, then it's going to put you in good stead for the rest of the game. Might sound a little bit dirty, but then I'm countering that with playing short passing football. So, realistically, I'm doing the good and the bad side of the game, which every team needs to do every now and again. So we'll just finish off these player instructions. With the strikers, if I'm playing with a target man, I usually put him with an advance forward, just because I like the advance forward to move into channels, as you can see there. And then obviously the target man will just stick in the box. So even though I've got wide players, if my striker's moving out wide, it means my centre attacking midfielder can move up to the striker position and possibly get a few goals for us. So what you've probably noticed is I've allowed the front three to have more direct passes and the wingers, because like I mentioned before, we've got John Parkin up front. He's not bad at using his head to score goals, so it'll be good to get some crosses in. That formation with the wing backs is the one I usually use in the Premier League, just because obviously with the diamond in midfield it's quite simple to be able to keep hold of the ball. But I don't know whether that formation would be useful in such a low division, so I thought mix it up a little bit and make it look a bit more dodgy, because it's always funny. Unless you start losing, and then obviously we don't want that to happen. But if it does, then we've got a few backup formations to be able to deal with it. As you could see just then, the youth setup at Fleetwood at the moment is currently not great, but they have got, I think it's superb youth facilities, and I'll probably ask the board at some point to upgrade my junior coaching, which is the coaching the players receive before they get drafted into your team in the youth recruitment. That's usually around March time in the English leagues. And obviously it's good to get some players from there because they're free, they're on low wages, and if they've got a lot of potential you can slowly introduce them into the team. The way I usually do that is if they're 2-star for the league you're currently in, it's worth giving them a shot because then you can see whether they're actually going to progress to their main role, like of their potential. So this is the first press conference that you get given. You don't have to attend it, but then the media get a bad reputation of you at the start. And I don't know if you noticed it in that last press conference, but at the bottom there's a little bit where you can put certain messages that you want to put in yourself. So obviously there's the set ones. Now the ones you write yourself don't have an influence on the game. However, it's sometimes funny to just slate another manager and call him a dickhead or something like that. Especially if it's like Jose Mourinho trying to play mind games. You can get the upper hand on him by swearing at him. So this is me interacting with the board. Basically you can just ask for many different things. So there we got the junior coaching upgraded, or the budget increased, and the wage budget got increased to help us get some players in. And then that was the little slider bar for the transfer and wage budget. You can just adjust that however you want to a certain extent. So the first thing we're looking for is players that are listed for loan. It's a good system to use when in these lower divisions because you could get a youngster that's at a top club that can't currently get into their side, so they might want to let him go and get some first team football. So you can take advantage of that. When you're in the Premier League, it's not as useful, but sometimes you can get some absolute steals on loan and then put a future fee on them to be able to sign them at the end of the season. There is a new transfer offer system. Like as you can see in the bottom right sort of the screen, you can suggest terms with them and then the club will come back with what they think they want for the player, and then you can negotiate that way. You can do that about 3 or 4 times I've noticed, and then once you've done that the club will say either yes or no, and then you'll obviously have to go through the process again. But it just makes transfers a little bit quicker really. So now we're looking at some free agents, because free agents in this league should be able to perform. And with the wage budget just being increased, it means we've got a bit of money there available to give to some players, and our squad's not currently great and it's also not massive, so it's good just to like update your squad. Even if the free agents are only backup players, obviously you need a squad to be able to get promoted, not just a first 11 that's really good and then terrible backup players, because if one of your best players gets injured then you're screwed. So you need a decent backup. So here's a few players we're going in for. I was surprised when I found David James's name. I thought he'd retired and he's got Rotherham after him, but I thought I don't really want him to come in because I remember some of his blunders for England, and I didn't really fancy bringing him in at 42 years old because he's not going to be as agile as he once was. So I'm just getting a few scout reports on these players. one thing I would recommend is check your coaching staff and have a look just to see if they need upgrading. I didn't do it on this because I thought it would take up a bit of time, even though obviously it's a good tip to give you. I probably should have done it, but at the end of the day I haven't done it now, so I am recording over this video because it required a lot of editing, so I thought it would be a lot easier to record over the top of it so that I could cut out whatever I want and then record after, like the audio. So this Marco Gorgenzo, or whatever his name was, he actually did become a part of the side. He's not exactly exceptional, but he seems like he could be able to do a job on that left hand side. Seems quite versatile as well. If I change my formation, he can play at left wing back. So there's an option to play that wing back formation that I usually play in the Premier League. So Matt Derbyshire was a player that I thought would do really well at League 2 level. Only thing is, I could not afford the wage contribution for the loan that the club were looking for. So then I just clicked on the interact with board option, which sometimes your board will sign players for you, but sometimes they won't, as you can see here. Because I really think Matt Derbyshire could have got us about 20-30 goals in League 2. So here's the philosophy talks. Basically they wanted me to play attacking football, which I still want to play, but I would prefer to play possession football, so I changed it from attacking to possession football. Now obviously that means I've got to keep up with the possession football, which if it's not going well in this league and I haven't got the players to be able to play that way, could mean my job is in jeopardy. I said that really weird then, I apologise. In jeopardy, that's what I was trying to say. So now we've agreed that, it means we can play our way, because sometimes possession is not really attacking, so I thought it's best to take out that attacking philosophy that the board want us to play, just to sort of secure our job a little bit more. So we're now going into our first friendly against St Mirren from Scotland. I'm not really expecting great things from this friendly, because even though St Mirren aren't exactly the best of sides, they're probably on par or slightly better than Fleetwood Town. So realistically it's the first test we've got. However, it will give us a chance to see the new improved match engine. And these are the opposition instructions that you can just set, like show a player onto certain feet, etc. And tight marking, closing down. And then you've got your team talks, which you can say in a number of ways. You can say passionately, assertively, cautiously. So I thought I'd cut this, just purely show the goals and like if there's red cards and stuff. So it didn't start too well for us. I don't know whether that Adam Campbell was the guy that's currently in Newcastle's youth setup. If it is, then that probably explains why he scored against us. Because he's got a lot of potential, that kid. Oh yeah, it is. I can see his picture now. So the camera that I play in is 2D Classic. I used to play in the 3D view, but now I just have the replays in the 3D view. So as you can see, 12 minutes into the second half we went 2-0 down. And then I thought I'd just tweak it a little bit. Put us a bit more attacking and go route one. Play the proper English football. And a couple of minutes after the changes, this happened. So maybe if we would have started this way, then the result wouldn't have been a defeat. But then you've got your end of match team talk, and unfortunately we didn't keep control of the possession that game. But at the end of the day, you can't keep possession in every game, especially if they were a little bit better than us. So we just put the match training onto attacking movement because we're playing against Chase Town. And here is our first signing, Gorzegno. As you can see, not amazing. He's got a little bit of acceleration and pace. Not bad crossing, good work rate. Should do a good job. And then you get the chance to unveil the player. It's always good to do that because then players can react really well, or obviously they can react badly depending on what you say about them in the press conference. So that's Gorzegno unveiled. And that guy chose to reject us, so we do not like him anymore. And that guy we got a scout report on but chose not to go for. Now here is the trial day, which is basically players that have been released from their old clubs. They weren't deemed as good enough players for the team they were at, so they got released, and then they go into an England trial day. So there's Dean Santangelo from Man United, the Iranian goalkeeper. And there's Mark Randall, who used to play for Arsenal. Made a few League Cup appearances for them. So they're the main two that we were looking at from this trial day. But obviously it's good to scout them just to make sure. So Randall didn't, well, he became a part of the team. He didn't exactly perform well in his opening few games, but I'm sure you'll see that later on. I keep giving away spoilers, don't I? But just a little taster of what's to come. He wouldn't let us offer for Santangelo and Randall, so I just thought I'd declare interest in both of them. I think it's because obviously they hadn't played the trial day yet, so it wasn't letting people approach to sign them. So we approached Dean Santangelo and we approached Mark Randall, who both became a part of the Fleetwood Town team we're trying to put together. They're not great now, but they've got a bit of potential about them, which will mean we won't have to replace them when we move up a division, if we move up a division, that is. So we're just obviously looking at all the others. I was tempted by that guy, but I chose not to get him. Can't remember why, but as you can see, Randall didn't exactly have a great game. He came off the bench and had a quiet game. So now we're going in to play Chase Town. And I mentioned in the last friendly about the improved match engine. Basically what they've improved this year compared to Football Manager 13 is they've enhanced the AI, so the computer players you're playing against, and obviously your players, how they perform compared to your team instructions. And then they've improved player animations, so they've added in a few like turns and stuff which you might notice every now and again. It's quite hard to notice them because you don't really analyse how every player touches the ball. They've also added in more realistic player reaction to on-field incidents. So say like a penalty gets awarded and your players don't agree with it, then they will go out to the ref and obviously complain a little bit. Now it can get them in trouble, but sometimes that helps. Say your player gets sent off for conceding a penalty, and then at the end of the game you get a chance to appeal. If your players are not happy with it, at the end of the game there's a referee box which tells you whether they've had a good game, whether they've made a controversial decision, So then obviously if it's a controversial red card, you could just go and appeal against it and it should get rescinded. So this game started really well for us. John Parkins scoring early on in the first minute. And then 10 minutes later, from a set piece, which are going to be quite vital in a league such as League 2, we managed to double our advantage. And then the advantage got cut 2 minutes later. So one thing we can see from the friendlies so far is we can score goals, but we can also concede a fair few. So we won a penalty here, and I don't know if you've seen at the bottom, but it mentioned that their players were running up to the ref and complaining, and we put that away nicely. 3-1 lead in 14-15 minutes, can't complain. One thing I've noticed as well is the passing seems to be there, which is good news for when the season goes on, because it means obviously choosing to play possession football with this team is actually going to work, and the fact we can score from set pieces gives us a plan B. It's always good to have a plan A and plan B, sometimes a plan C, which is why you've probably got 3 tactics. But pre-season, it's mainly about fitness, obviously, but it's a good way of checking how your tactic's going to perform and getting your players familiar with the tactic. So we controlled possession in that game, even though Chase Town aren't exactly the best of sides, with no disrespect to them, but I'm sure most people would agree. So here is our goalkeeper, Dean Santangelo. I think that's how you say his name anyway. But he's an Iranian, got released by Man United, and for this league he's got 5-star potential, which I think will take him up to about championship level, and then obviously if we do make it that far and then make it a bit further into the Prem, then he might be decent as a backup. I don't think he would be good enough to be the first team goalkeeper. And then we got Mark Randall as well. I think the main thing that attracted me to him, obviously apart from the fact he's got a few good stats and he's got a fair bit of potential, was mainly his links with Arsenal. And here are the clubs at the board have come back to us with the parent club options. Now with this, obviously Villa have got superb youth facilities, so it's always good to look at that when you're choosing your team. So we went with them, and as you can see we've got a fair few good players that are available for us. Jed Steer was a little bit hopeful because he is championship quality and even decent Premier League, but I thought it was worth a try. So we put an offer in for him. And then there was Donasian, which we chose to make an offer for because he looks like he could be a solid centre-back in the future. And Daniel Johnson also looks like he could be a good player in the centre of midfield. So with the parent clubs we don't have to pay any wages. The club can recall their players if they want to, but it very rarely happens because obviously they're under 18 players. At this point I was looking for Jack Grealish, one of Villa's youngsters, because he has got a lot of potential. He can go on to become a Premier League player after a couple of seasons, and I couldn't find him in their team, so I thought I'd search for him instead. That search option, you can just search for clubs, players, staff members, etc. Just a bit easier to find them. So as you can see, he's already got amazing stats for a 17-year-old. But because he's already out on loan, we didn't have the chance to get him. So maybe next season he can come in and hopefully play League One football with us. But we've got to see how the season goes first. This next friendly is going to be a big test against Swindon. So Aston Villa accepted our offers for them to play us, and then another one, and then you've got to do your squad numbers ready for the season. It's a good idea to check whether players have got a preferred number, because it just adds to their morale a little bit, really, if you give them the number they're asking for. So we're just going to assign Randall, Santangelo and Gorzegno a number. And now it's time to play Swindon. So the match preview, it shows like a predicted starting lineup for the other team. It's a good idea to check on that because it shows you the formation they're likely to play as well. You can go very in detail on Football Manager like this year because there's things such as a stat pack which shows when teams score goals, when they concede, like in certain time periods. So you can obviously go on overload if they concede a lot in that period of time, or if they score a lot in that period of time, you could just be cautious and sort of defend a little bit more, really. So we put in a few of our new signings into this. They're playing a basic 4-5-1 or 4-3-3. People call it different things. I wasn't expecting a win out of this. I was just hoping we could keep the goals out a little bit, but obviously 16 minutes in we conceded. And then we moved on to this point where we've shown a little bit more passing football and managed to finish it off. Because it's all well and good being able to keep the ball and pass it around, but you need to have a threat in the final third, which we've shown we can have, which is quite promising. So we managed to hold on until the 77th minute, and then we had a chance. Which we took very well, but it was ruled out to be offside. I did rewind it and check whether it was right, and it did seem to be the right decision. And then that happened late in the game. Can't afford to be conceding them when it comes to the actual season. But we can take some positives from this match because we've seen a bit of our passing play. We've seen that, well, we scored one of our goals was allowed, and obviously we managed to score another, so we could have actually won that match. So there's positive signs. So Jed Steer rejected us, which we did kind of expect a little bit. It's a shame because he would have been a very good goalkeeper for us. However, this Donasian seems like he could be a vital player for us this season and in the future. So we're now moving on to the next game. Good to see that Hughes has resumed full training because he does seem like one of our best players. Daniel Johnson decided not to join us, which was a bit annoying. And I accidentally only signed Santangelo to a 1-year contract, so hopefully if he's doing well by January we can offer him a new deal. So we signed up John Park into a new deal as well. And we only signed Gorzegno to a 1-year deal. But I'm sure they'll agree to join us. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You can get your assistant to play the friendlies for you. and then you just press continue and it simulates it. And we managed to win, so we can't complain. We had a fair bit of possession as well, with their keeper getting man of the match. And now another club went in for Johnson on loan, which I'm pretty sure he decided to join. And now we're choosing our captain. Now, as you can see, the assistant has put them in order of what he thinks is the most suitable captain for you. And because I was new to the club and I didn't want to upset anyone, I thought I'd just keep the two captains that I had. And there was another friendly win for us. So we're approaching the first game of the season, where hopefully we'll start well. Thought we'd go for attacking movement because ideally we want to win our first match. And here with the backroom advice meetings, it's basically a meeting with your staff. They suggest training for different players, and then they recommend players, they recommend staff. They say whether you should list players for loan, change their squad status, offer them a new contract, etc. And it also tells you when players are eligible for a pro deal. So like your youngsters, if you forget that they're approaching the age where they can sign a pro deal, then your backroom staff can assist you in that respect. You can also get ahead of youth development and like get him to control contracts and all that sort of thing, but they sometimes give contracts to some terrible players, and that's a lot of effort, because then you have to release them once they've already signed. So Casagrande to make managerial debut. Here's what I was mentioning earlier about putting messages in the bottom. Unfortunately, what we said and the ones we wrote in didn't get chosen to be published by the reporters. I'm pretty sure there's, well, I've sworn stuff in that box before and it's not been filtered out, so you can literally say anything you want and it has no influence on the game whatsoever. It just adds a bit of humour to it. So feel free to put whatever you want in that box. Obviously your pre-match press conferences, they have an influence on the game itself. Like if you hype up your team to like be promotion favourites or something, for example, it could lead to your players being nervous in the matches, which is not ideal because it means they won't play to the best of their abilities. But you can counteract that if you do decide to praise your team. You can counteract that with using the team talk of no pressure today. So then, even though you've said to the media the team are going to go on and win the league, or something like that, then you're actually saying something different to your players and saying, obviously, for them not to get nervous and that the result will look after itself or something like that. So I'll put a few examples into this pre-match press conference, just to give you a few ideas of what you could put in that box. I usually only do it to managers that disrespect me, really, or say that you've got a weak link in your team. You just say something harsh about them. So obviously the first game doesn't really have much of an effect on the rest of your season, but it's good to have a good start. So as you can see, like, none of our additional comments got published. So if you want them to get published, it's good to write on every single question they ask. Right, so we're allowed 7 subs in this, so we have to choose the team wisely. Santangelo is, I decided, will be the number 1 because he's got a bit of potential about him. So hopefully, if I play him, his potential could rise even more, and his current ability will go up as well, obviously. I know this episode's gone on for quite a while, but I thought I need to get pre-season out of the way in the first couple of games in one episode, because I know most people don't really enjoy watching pre-season. So probably at some point in the season I will sack my coaches and get some better ones in. Not that I'll get any exceptional coaches at this level, but I'll be able to get some that are possibly better than ours. So there's our team submitted for the first game. They've gone for a 4-1-4-1, so you could say it's defensive. I say it's defensive anyway. We lost that 1-0. There wasn't much to happen in the game, so I just cut it out, and their goal wasn't that special either. So I thought to keep the episode nice, well, a little bit shorter, I'll cut some of it out. This was the next match against Tranmere. And they had mainly all of the chances and scored with their first attempt. And that's how the game ended. So first 2 games have not exactly gone to plan. We haven't managed to score a goal, and we've conceded in both of them. So unfortunately we've lost the first 2. And now moving on to Plymouth away. One thing I didn't decide to do is tweak the formation, because I thought the players aren't familiar with it yet, so they're allowed to, well, they're not allowed to perform badly, but I can understand if they do. Made a few tweaks that time. So we had the first chance of the match and managed to put it away. First goal of the season for the player and for the team. However, it went from good to bad, because Danasium went and got sent off for a second yellow card, which then led to them equalising in the second half. So here's the passing football again that we were talking about, and then their man got sent off. So it's now 10 against 10 for the last 8 minutes or so, 7 minutes. However, no one managed to score. So it's the first point. At least we're not stuck on 0 points anymore. Shame we couldn't win, because I reckon if we didn't get that red card we could have pushed on and actually won that game. So now moving on to Burton Albion, playing them at home. Things didn't get off to a good start. We went 1-0 down in the first 5 minutes. So obviously if I would have read the stat pack, that could have been the time where they score most of their goals. Unfortunately, because they were pressing high, we couldn't pass it out to the defenders, which then obviously led to this attack that they're having right now, which we gave away a penalty, and one of my players got a warning. So that's pretty much put the game out of sight for us, which is a shame. But at the end of the day, you win some, you lose some. Still early on in the season. So we're coming to the end of this episode. Feel free to like, share and subscribe. And I will see you next episode. Thanks for watching, guys.